This is Sandi Ault reporting from the wild, and this is the audio podcast companion to my blog on Substack. This is episode 30. Everybody wants to rule the world. Everybody wants to rule the world. That line is from a song I love by Tears for Fears. And I love this beautiful, fragile world, and also our imperfect nation, built on cherished ideals we have never fully achieved. But I fear the title of that song is foretelling, and that by the time most of us are awake to what is happening, all that we hold dear about both our world and our nation could be gone. My trepidation is born out of a mix of hyper-awareness and sleepless worry, a state where I, like some of you, struggle to figure out a way to rouse our sleepwalking fellow citizens to look out to the horizon, see what is coming, and engage before it's too late. I fear that what lies ahead for us will be so far worse than the sum of all that the administration is hurling at us daily that we will lack the means to address it. To avert the still greater disaster, we need a plan sufficient to the challenge and a mass of inspired and united people who will commit to that plan. Many of us who are awake and already in the fight are focused on the next election. More than a few of us wonder if there will even be a next free and fair election in this country. Already, the democracy defenders with whom I stand, shoulder to shoulder, are working together for justice and equality to address climate change, preserve endangered species and natural resources, promote election integrity, and push back against corruption in government at every level. We give generously of our limited resources of time, energy, and money. We fight on many levels: neighborhood, local government, statewide, nationwide, and global. Hope rises with every small win, and defeats have not deterred us. We strive on. Yet, I worry if we can effect real change at this pace and in these numbers against the forces mounting against us. After Republicans suffered a rout in the November elections, this corrupt administration proceeded to commit worse crimes, to destroy more and more of what once made this country great, to advance alignment with authoritarians and undermine our allies, to pronounce indecencies publicly, invade our cities, and ignore the sentiments of the citizenry. It becomes obvious that they don't fear public disapproval, nor the next election. It is all too likely they intend to retain power, no matter the actual results. My fellow democracy defenders and I have been boomeranging about in this chaotic whirlwind of destruction for nearly a decade, and the effort required to keep up intensifies almost hourly. I am cursed to have a slightly more panoramic view than some of them. Those who have not studied the big picture have hinted from time to time that I am alarmist. Some wish I weren't doomsaying when they need to hear hope. There is always some evidence for hope. I am not counting out hope, or I would not be writing this, and I would not be resisting still. But I am also not denying what I can see, or that I am often more far-sighted than those I respect and value for their own detail-oriented, close-up perspective. It takes both ways of looking at things to find the best way forward. My far-seeing tendencies derive from my experience in two trades: my younger days as a wildland firefighter and my career as a mystery author. Both of these require a broad view of the grand scheme of a disaster and/or a crime. Of course, I'm not the only one looking at the events of today through a wide-angle lens. If we carefully read, listen, and watch some of our great thinkers, writers, historians, and journalists, they are telling us that we are moving out of nation-states into a global takeover by the ultra-rich. Ruling over this imminent new world order are mafia-like cartels of billionaires who carve out their territory with violence and intimidation, information manipulation and control, and deprivation and chaos. If I trust anyone these days, it's American historian Heather Cox Richardson, and she's reporting what she's seeing.
The Trump administration is replacing American democracy with a kleptocracy, a system of corruption in which a network of ruling elites use the institutions of government to steal public assets for their own private gain. It permits virtually unlimited theft, while the head of state provides cover for his cronies through pardons and the uneven application of the law.
Later in that same post, HCR gets down to the real.
There is a growing sense that an elite group of wealthy people is running the world without accountability to the law, and that the Trump administration is protecting and even advancing the people in that group.
She continues.
Unlike the robber barons of the late 19th century, today's power elite is, as Anand Giridharadas of the Ink wrote on November 23rd in the New York Times, a borderless network of people connected not to nations or their fellow citizens, but to each other. They exchange non-public information and capital to enable the members of that group to control events, disregarding the effects of their decisions on those outside their network.
And since HCR has pointed us to this New York Times opinion column by Giridharadas, let's look at something else he says in that piece, which is titled, How the Elite Behave When No One is Watching, Inside the Epstein Files.
At the dark heart of this story is a sex criminal and his victims, and his enmeshment with President Trump. But it is also a tale about a powerful social network in which some, depending on what they knew, were perhaps able to look away because they had learned to look away from so much other abuse and suffering. The financial meltdowns some in the network helped trigger. The misbegotten wars some in the network pushed. The overdose crisis some of them enabled. The monopolies they defended. The inequity they turbocharged. The housing crisis they milked. The technologies they failed to protect people against.
The public and the media are now referring to this global cabal of the elite rich as the Epstein class, because we are learning through that scandal the broad global reach of enablement and funding for pedophilia that Epstein helped create and maintain, and how many world leaders, top bankers and investors, and ultra-rich movers and shakers were complicit in the pedophile web, even if not explicitly active in child sexual abuse. The Epstein scandal has been eclipsed by the war-making of this administration, laying bare the lust for oil that drives its murderous moves. The widespread outrage at the second strike murder of 2 survivors of a boat attack that was already a crime against humanity, we can't call it a war crime since we're not at war, is one thing. Add to that the shameful motive for the strikes, for moving the U.S. military into the region, and for seizing a Venezuelan oil tanker. Venezuela holds the world's largest crude oil reserves. The rich want the resources. The gang who controls the most goods rules the world. The same is true for the so-called Russian-written peace plan that the U.S. State Department, now a mafia-style underboss unit for the Project 20 Forever cabal, recently proposed. There is no desire for peace in this plan. If Russia, who wrote it, wanted peace, they would stop invading Ukraine. No, they and the U.S. want the rare earths, the ports, and the rich lands and resources of Ukraine.
Project 20 Forever, which has been in the works for decades, surfaced from the shadows when they installed the orangutan as a faux president figurehead to distract us with his outrageous antics while they strangle and siphon everything out of the U.S. government.
They enlisted the richest man in the world and his Doge thugs to bonesaw the U.S. government in the name of ending waste, fraud, and abuse, when in fact they escalated spending, rendered the government ineffective and inefficient, and eliminated the internal watchdogs so we couldn't see the extent of thievery and criminality they were committing. At the same time, their henchmen masquerading as ambassadors and cabinet members of the American oligarchy, or not even bothering to masquerade, as is the case with chromatomaniac Jared Kushner, gutted and neutered government agencies, halted spending on anything that benefits the people, created a domestic army under the guise of Homeland Security, and funded it with an astronomical budget, stopped working throughout the world to maintain peace, end hunger, arrest disease, and take climate action.
Now they have issued edicts that say all this and more out loud. The Thebocrats plan to break up NATO, abandon Europe, and instead focus on dominating Latin America and seizing all its assets and resources while promoting Russia's theft of goodies in other parts of the globe.
Here's some wisdom from the eloquent American actor, director, and narrator Peter Coyote from his essay on Substack, Missing the Forest for the Trees.
I think we're losing the political competition by not seeing the forest clearly due to our absorption and distraction with the trees. The trees are every insult, violation, falsehood, and gesture of disrespect for our government and norms perpetrated daily by the Trump dumpster class. The forest is an organized cohort of billionaires and corporate chieftains.
This might feel like it is something new, this sudden shift, extraneous of borders or nations, to a worldwide Thunderdome, where the tech kings and other filthy rich operators who have already formed wild warring pacts with former foes and unsavory strongmen seek to carve up the globe to fill their insatiable need for greed and power. But this is not new. Just perhaps more emboldened. In an opinion piece in The Nation, Jet here lamented the end of citizen-governed democracy, and he, as Coyote does in the aforementioned blog post, puts blame on Lewis Powell's 1971 Powell Memorandum.
The Powell Memo was the Project 2025 of the Nixon era, a detailed program for establishing and entrenching right-wing power over the commanding heights of American government and society.
Greenpeace called the Lewis Powell Memo a corporate blueprint to dominate democracy. And Robert Reich lamented the Powell Memo's onslaught, now manifest in ripeness, in his blog.
Today marks the start of the slide that ended with the catastrophe of Trump. On August 23, 1971, less than 2 months before he was nominated to serve as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, Lewis F. Powell Jr. wrote a memo to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The memo was titled Attack on American Free Enterprise System, and it outlined ways in which corporate America should defend and counterattack against disquieting voices, environmentalists, consumer advocates, and labor unions.
So, far-seeing and inquiring minds, including no doubt your minds, see all this and wonder, what now? Peter Coyote's conclusion begins with this observation.
We have failed to match Jefferson's courage in reimagining the changes required to keep our nation hand in hand with progress of the human mind.
I don't want to shine you on. We're in the deep stuff now that the stinking rich, heartless zombies have mastered, walking around in broad daylight while distracting and deluding the public to remain in power. Media conglomerates merge and expand in efforts to control and recreate information to shape the public's understanding without any obligation or allegiance to truth. Elon Musk announced his intent to build a robot army while spending volumes of his unlimited wealth to promote authoritarianism in European and African elections. He touts the future of humankind as resting on colonizing Mars, not preserving Earth. Billionaires build bunkers meant to survive nuclear war while they race to devour the planet's resources and disregard the destruction that climate change causes, in large part as a result of their own greed. AI outsources thinking and creativity, eliminates jobs, and gobbles up precious resources like water, land, energy, and clean air, while escaping regulation or mitigation of its ill effects and harmful potential. And the future wellness of humanity is now in the hands of vaccine deniers and health-harming hooligans, perhaps by design, because, after all, who among the wealthy wants to share limited, valuable resources with the great unwashed? An ethnic cleansing, Christo-fascist, cruelty-based elitism drives policy. And the power of those in charge derives not only from the ignorant and apathetic who gave them the keys, but also from the revenues we pay for them to govern, when clearly they have no intent to do so. It's a shocking lot, and no wonder few among us want to back up and look at it all. Not only is it hard to see and comprehend the breadth and depth of, but it's so disheartening it might devour our spirits. Yet I don't want you to think we don't have some daylight of our own to move around in, to try to arrest the total extinction of goodness, humanity, and maybe even democracy. Some shared ideas are taking root and beginning to grow among the best of our thinkers that could work to halt the progress of some of this at varying levels. Some, including MSN Now anchor Rachel Maddow, recently posited that as blue states begin to create alliances to provide services that the federal government used to provide, the United States may well come apart. And she refers to an event she held with American historian Timothy Snyder, who also fears this possibility.
And I will tell you, one of the things that really stuck with me from that night was that Professor Snyder said at one point in our discussion that he is less worried about there ultimately being a coast-to-coast, totally autocratic Trump dictatorship that controls everything in the entire United States of America. He's less worried about that prospect than he is that what Trump is doing to the country might pressure us and damage us in such a way that the United States of America breaks up.
More and more far-seeing thinkers are speaking and writing about the power of a blue state alliance, or even secession, soft or otherwise, that would permit those of us in this country who want equality, justice, integrity, accountability, decency, and democracy to refound our self-governing republic among those states who will uphold these things, rather than repeatedly fail to convince those who don't. More ideas are also out there if you look for them. I read Chris Armitage, Jonathan V. Last, and David Schuster on Substack for inspiration, and recommend them to you for their ideas and vision, as well as the writers I have quoted and already mentioned here. As for me, Sleepless in the Rockies, an inspiring sunrise of rose and gold unfolded as I was writing the last lines of this post. I will continue to work in my small corner of the world to uphold decency, equality, justice, self-governance, and environmental integrity, and to use my talents to hopefully awaken, inspire, provoke thought, and sometimes entertain those of you who have been kind enough to follow my work. Please let me know how I'm doing for you in that regard. This has been Sandi Ault reporting from the wild. Every week or so, I publish a written blog on Substack, and then a few days after, I produce a podcast version like this one. You can read and subscribe to the companion blog to this podcast on Substack at sandiault.substack.com. If you navigate there, you can see a photo of the sunrise outside my office windows and another photo of our 8-month-old wolf companion, Zuni, enjoying the first snow of his lifetime on one of our hikes in the Rockies. And if you want more stories from the wild, look for my Wild Mystery series in book, audiobook, and ebook. You can start with any book in the series and go wild. I want to thank the wonderful voiceover artists from my community who helped create this podcast. Our Purple Weather Lady, John Miller, T. Kerns, George Jackson, Ron Schukar, and Tim Courington. And to Theresa Daus Weber and Eric Brody from our Power Pack production team for their work on this script. Check out Eric's Substack, Decency and Sense. Let's roll a few writer credits. I've used a title and a line from Tears for Fears' great song, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, written by Curt Smith and Roland Orzabal. I've quoted the great Heather Cox Richardson from her Notes from an American Post of November 30th, 2025. And Anand Giridharadas' piece, How the Elite Behave When No One Is Watching, inside the Epstein emails from the New York Times. Also, Peter Coyote's blog on Substack, Missing the Forest for the Trees. Jet Here's The Powell Memo helped create Project 2025, published in The Nation. And Robert Reich's Substack blog post, Today is the anniversary of the worst memo in history. I've used a clip from MS Now's The Rachel Maddow Show of Rachel telling it like it is. The full notes and links for all of these are on my Substack. Check it out and go wild.